Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for taking the time to attend our consumer workshop again this year. To those joining us for the first time, we welcome you. My name is Ayanda Mazwi, and I'm a Senior Assistant Ombudsman at the Office of the Short-Term Insurance Ombudsman. I'm also the Head of Public Relations, and I will be facilitating this morning's workshop. This year, the Ombudsman for Short-Term Insurance and the Ombudsman for Long-Term Insurance are hosting a joint consumer workshop. In 2020, the two offices entered a soft amalgamation. We refer to the soft amalgamation to indicate that there has not yet been a complete merger of the two offices into a single ombudsman scheme for the insurance industry. For now, however, we continue to operate as two separate entities under a single ombudsman. And this is Judge Ron McLaren. Before we begin, I would like to give you a very brief overview of our offices. The Ombudsman for Short-Term Insurance is abbreviated OSTI, and the Ombudsman for Long-Term Insurance, abbreviated OLTI, are both independent, non-profit industry ombud schemes. Jointly, we are referred to as the Insurance Ombudsman. Short-term insurance includes motor vehicle insurance, buildings, household contents, cell phone cover, travel insurance, disability, credit protection insurance, as well as commercial insurance for small businesses and sole proprietors. OLTI resolves disputes between complainants and insurers arising from the long-term insurance policies. These will include a life policy, funeral policies, annuities, and disability benefits. Our mandate is to provide the insuring public with a free, efficient, and fair dispute resolution mechanism, and we do this through an alternative dispute resolution process. We examine the information and evidence placed before us by the parties to the dispute, and our recommendations are guided by the legal position as well as principles of fairness and equity for which we are granted jurisdiction. OSTI and OLTI are independent and impartial. What this means is that we are neither a consumer champion or an industry trade body. Our decisions are not binding on the complainant, that is the insured. What this means is that he or she may still go to court or in any other alternative dispute resolution forum should they not be happy with the outcome of the dispute in our offices. Insurers, on the other hand, are bound by a ruling issued by our offices. Now, during today's workshop, we will briefly outline the office's complaints handling process, including how to submit a complaint. The Office of the Long-Term Insurance Ombudsman will discuss complaints that cannot be upheld by their office and the reasons for this. Short-term insurance will thereafter be discussed in general, and we will hone in a little bit more on specified home contents cover. Now, despite conducting this workshop under a virtual platform, we want this to be as interactive as possible. If you look at the left-hand side of the screen, you will see our live Q&A chat box. Please type in your questions and any comments that you may have in the chat box. At the end of all of the presentations, we will then address the questions, but please feel free to leave your questions and comments ongoing during the process of the presentations. Also, while we are speaking on the specific topics I highlighted previously, you may also post any other questions that you may have concerning insurance or our office's processes. Our panel of speakers will deal with as much as we can during the time allocated for this workshop. Now, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our first speaker, Derpana Harkison. She's a Senior Assistant Ombudsman at OSTI and will be discussing the complaints handling process. Thank you, Derpana.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Derpana Harkison, and I'm a Senior Assistant Ombudsman at the Ombudsman for Short-Term Insurance. My topic of discussion this morning is OSTI's complaints handling process. The reason for discussing this topic is that it is important for consumers and their representatives to understand how OSTI goes about resolving disputes. Firstly, OSTI does not operate like a court of law, which means that we do not conduct hearings where the evidence of each party is examined and cross-examined. OSTI will decide on a complaint on the basis of the information provided to it by the parties to the dispute. Therefore, it is very important for consumers to provide all the information at their disposal pertaining to the dispute. This is particularly significant when the complainant submits the application for assistance. OSTI receives approximately 15,000 applications for assistance per annum from 7 sources. The first source being our website, the Insurance Ombudsman's website, email, fax, post, telephone, and telephone. Regardless of the method used to submit the complaint to our office, each complaint must be accompanied by a completed application for assistance. An online application for assistance can be found on our website at www.osti.co.za. The website also has hard copies of the application for assistance, which can be downloaded, completed, signed, and then either emailed, faxed, or posted to our office. In addition to the completed application for assistance, the complainant must also provide copies of the ID, the policy or schedule, the letter of rejection, a power of attorney, if the complainant is being represented by an agent, broker, or attorney, and copies of all correspondence with the insurer. Completing the application for assistance correctly will assist our office in processing the application faster. By correctly, we mean that certain basic information must be provided. The first being the name of the policyholder. This is the name of the person who is identified as the policyholder on the schedule or the policy documents. Now, the name of the policyholder is necessary as OSTI does not have jurisdiction over third-party complaints, and these complaints may be referred either to the small claims court or an attorney. The second most vital piece of information is the policyholder's contact information, including their telephone numbers and email address. The reason that we require this information is that we deal with complaints in writing and occasionally make telephone calls to complainants. And complainants must ensure that all their contact details provided are always correct and up to date. Just to reiterate, OSTI deals with complaints in writing, and if we do not have the complainant's correct contact details, then we cannot communicate effectively with the complainant. Thirdly, we require the name of the insurer, the claim number, and policy number. If this information is not provided, then the application cannot be processed and we cannot proceed further with the dispute. Briefly, OSTI's complaints handling process entails forwarding the complaint to the insurer for its answer. If we do not have the name of the correct insurer, the correct policy or claim number, then this will lead to delays in the finalization of the complaint. Finally, the complainant must provide in his details of complaint full details of what the dispute is about, any defense which the complainant may wish to raise, and then the remedy which the complainant is seeking. In other words, what the complainant wants from OSTI. The more information which is provided, the better it is to enable us to make a decision quicker. Although OSTI's official languages are English and Afrikaans, if complainants are unable to complete the form in any of these languages, then the form may be completed in any of South Africa's official languages. OSTI has two application forms. We have a personal lines application form for policies belonging to individuals, and then we have a commercial lines application form where the policyholder is a commercial entity. Complainants can decide which application is to be completed by looking at the schedule of insurance, which usually specifies whether the policy is a personal or commercial policy. Completing the wrong application is not detrimental to the complaint. However, it is important that the correct form is completed, as different information is required on a commercial complaint, which, if not provided, could delay the registration of the complaint. Complainants also do not pay a fee for referring a dispute to OSTI, and the complainant may be represented by an agent or a broker or an attorney for purposes of dealing with the complaint at OSTI. Once a properly completed application for assistance is received, the complaint now becomes a case. Now I will take you through the actual complaints handling process. Once the application becomes a case, then the life cycle of the complaint is as follows. Firstly, if the insurer was not previously advised of the complaint, the insurer is given 21 days within which to resolve the dispute directly with the insurer. If the dispute remains unresolved after 21 days, then the complaint is referred to our fast-track department. At our fast-track department, the complaint is investigated, and if it is easily resolvable, after taking into consideration the complainant's details of complaint and the insurer's answer to the complaint, then a preliminary recommendation is made to the complainant, after which the file is closed. If the matter cannot be resolved at the fast-track department, then the matter is referred to the standard complaints handling department for further investigation. At OSTI, we look at each complaint carefully. There is no set time in which we resolve complaints, as each matter is different, and how long it takes will depend on a number of factors, including how complex the complaint is, how long it will take to get all the relevant information and for both sides to tell their story, whether reports from third parties are needed, such as loss adjuster reports or claims experts reports. Finally, whether the complaint or the insurer accept our initial recommendation. We try to achieve an informal resolution of the matter as soon as it is possible. In many instances, we are able to resolve matters to the satisfaction of both sides by making informal recommendations and without having to issue formal ombudsman decisions. Finally, if the complainant is not happy with the recommendation made by this office, then the complainant may escalate the complaint for further consideration after providing reasons for not agreeing with the recommendation. At the end of the life cycle of a complaint at OSTI, the complainant may still approach a court of law to further ventilate their dispute. Our terms of reference also make provision for an appeal process. In conclusion, I want to say that each complaint which comes to OSTI is decided on its own merits. Once again, this stresses the importance of the complainant providing all the necessary information to our office as soon as possible, so that all the information is considered when a determination is made. I now hand you over to Seba Silali, who is an Assistant Ombudsman at the Ombudsman for Long-Term Insurance. Thank you for your attendance at our workshop today.
Thank you very much, Daphna. Good morning, Program Director, CEO of OSTI, my colleagues from both offices, and most importantly to our audience. I've prepared a presentation for this event which deals with important features of the Office of the Ombudsman for Long-Term Insurance, starting with its mission, the complaints handling process, and types of long-term insurance policies. My name is Nceba Sihlali, ladies and gentlemen. I am an Assistant Ombudsman at the Office of the Ombudsman for Long-Term Insurance. We will start with our mission. Our mission is to receive and consider complaints against subscribing members of the long-term insurance industry and to resolve such complaints through mediation, conciliation, recommendation, and as a last resort by determination. We derive our mandate from the rules which are available on our website. In order to achieve our mission and resolve disputes speedily, our process is informal, free to complainants, easily accessible unlike the courts of law, and is cost-effective and takes equity and fairness into consideration. About our office. This office was established in January 1985. It is probably one of the oldest voluntary scheme which is available in this country. The Ombudsman has always been a retired judge. The office is independent scheme which is recognized by law. We are not a statutory organization. We do not report to Parliament. We are only accountable to the Ombudsman Council. We operate according to the rules of the Ombudsman, which apply to the office, insurers, and to the complainants. Our office is independent from the industry, consumers, and the regulator. It makes impartial decisions. We don't take instructions from either the regulator, the consumers, the industry, or from Parliament. We are independent. Our decisions are binding on the insurers, but not on the complainants. So complainants can still go to court if they are not satisfied with our ruling. We can award compensation for poor service of up to 50,000 rand, irrespective of the decision that we have made on the merits. There's no legal representation which is required. If you have lodged a complaint with our office, your complaint doesn't prescribe while the complaint is still under our investigation. And there is no limit in the amount that you can claim in this office. The office is committed to independence, objectivity, impartiality, informality, promptness, cost effectiveness, confidentiality, and applying principles of law, but subject to considerations of equity or fairness. How the office works: in considering a complaint, we take into account probabilities, onus of proof, legal principles, and consideration of equity and fair play. What can consumers complain about? Consumers can complain about problems with life or long-term insurance policies, which include declined claims, poor service, lapsing of policies, non-disclosure, benefit values, and mis-selling. What are the long-term insurance policies? When we are talking about the long-term insurance policies, we are talking about your life policy, funeral policy, credit life policies, disability, health, and investment policies. On credit life policies, there are two very much important benefits which are provided under that policy, which is the retrenchment benefits and inability to earn an income benefits. These complaints, we have seen an increase in those complaints since the lockdown, precisely because most people have lost their jobs. And I'm also of the view that we will see another increase because of the social unrest which occurred in KwaZulu-Natal as well as in Gauteng. How to lodge a complaint? The process is very informal. Firstly, you must complain to the insurer. However, we don't turn away your complaint if you have not done that. If you are not satisfied with the insurer's response, then you can lodge a complaint to our office by email, fax, post, or on our website, or by phone. We also accept walk-in complainants subject to COVID-19 restrictions. You must provide the name of the insurer, policy number, full contact details, factual summary of your complaint, and copies of the relevant documents, which includes the repudiation letter or policy schedules, etc. Obviously, your complaint must be in writing. What happens next? You will receive a letter of acknowledgement from us. We'll ask the insurer to submit a written response within 6 weeks. You will be afforded an opportunity to comment. We may at any stage request further information. Once our investigation has been completed, we may make a recommendation or issue a ruling if the complaint is not settled through correspondence or by phoning the parties or by attending various meetings. Our rulings, ladies and gentlemen, are twofold. We first issue a provisional determination and thereby allowing parties, if any parties aggrieved by that ruling, can come back with new information or new evidence. When that happens, the file is then reallocated to another adjudicator who will conduct a new investigation and then decide whether to issue a new provisional ruling or confirm the provisional ruling as a final ruling. If a final ruling has been made and one of the parties is still not happy about the ruling, we do have an appeal process. You can make an application for a leave to appeal to the judge. The judge will grant that application if the issue in dispute is in the industry or public interest, or if there are reasonable prospects of success if the judge thinks that there are reasonable prospects of success on appeal. You may submit your complaint in any of the official languages. Please remember that our services are free. And in conclusion, if you are assisted by a representative, you must submit a written mandate authorizing that representative, authorizing you, you must submit a written mandate authorizing him or her to assist you. I thank you. From now, I will now hand over to Ms. Tankuna, who is a Senior Assistant Ombudsman, who will be dealing with a topic about A, B, C, D, and E's of insurance, also known as non-life. Thank you. Over to you, Ms. Tankuna.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As it has been stated, I'm going to be talking about the basics of short-term insurance, otherwise also referred to as non-life insurance. The so-called small print sometimes, and I think inaccurately so, particularly in the context that nowadays you hardly ever find any insurance policy that has small print, and also that the policy wordings we currently use tend to be clearly worded and simply worded as such. I'm going to have a look at some of the concepts that are used in short-term insurance, have a brief overview over some of the common terms and conditions that one would find in one's policy. And before I get into the detail of that, I would just like to highlight that your policy terms and conditions are what govern your relationship between the insured and the insurer, arising from the contractual relationship that they have. And from that perspective, therefore, one's failure to comply with the terms and conditions of cover could result in a declined claim, and in more serious circumstances, perhaps even a complete cancellation or avoidance of one's policy. Under the A part of the ABCDEs of short-term insurance, I have all risk. And by all risk, we refer to something sometimes referred to as portable possessions. And this refers to things like your jewelry, cell phones, laptops, bicycles, items of clothing, things that one would carry on their person or with them while carrying on their daily business. And I'd like to start off by giving you an image of a cyclist that wears an expensive helmet for protection, a fancy smartwatch, expensive shoes, that bicycle that I referred to, all of those things. And you'll think about these in that context, but you'll also realize that any other person that is not a cyclist could be wearing or carrying any of these items. And that is why we have to be careful how we comply, or that we comply with our policy terms and conditions so that we can enjoy cover. The most important thing that I would like to highlight is that for one to enjoy cover for these items, one would have to generally specify and pay an additional premium in relation to those items. Some insurers will still provide cover for a limited amount for what is called unspecified all risk cover, and you do not want to be exposed where you find that you have lost a whole lot of items of great value, and maybe you're only paid out a 5,000 rand or 10,000 rand. It is also important to note that because you need to prove that you have suffered a loss, insurers will often require you to provide proof of ownership and value in order to process your claim where you get a payout. Failure to produce such evidence may compromise your claim in some or other way. Also important to note that often insurers will give one the benefit of the doubt and say for certain items, for example, items of clothing, and considering the age of those items, it may not be reasonable to require that one should still be in possession of proof of ownership, and there will be some concessions usually in that regard. What usually guides insurers in that regard would be things like one's social standing in terms of wealth and the material that they possess, income, your lifestyle, things that can be found still in your possession that indicate that you are likely to have owned that which you claim to have lost, and in that instance you'll be given the benefit of the doubt. One of the other important provisions that one is likely to come across is a provision that states that if you leave your valuable items in a car, you will not enjoy cover unless there are clear signs of forced and or violent entry into the car. And this is essentially to guard against people that are just careless with their belongings on the understanding that they could simply claim their losses from the insurer. The B's of short-term insurance, here I speak about buildings, and buildings will generally be the actual building that is insured, and there will usually be a specific definition of what is included in your buildings cover. Some of the things that would be included are your paving, your swimming pools, tennis courts, boundary walls, some such things. And one of the biggest issues that comes up often with regards to building claims and your building policy is the insured's duty to maintain the insured property. A lot of claims are declined on grounds that the insured would have failed to provide, rather to maintain the insured property. And as a result of that, any losses that can be associated with that failure to maintain the insured property would be declined. Defects in construction, material design, poor workmanship in general is also one of the common aspects that lead to disputes. And bearing in mind that your insurance policy is meant to provide cover for sudden unforeseen events, it is not surprising that insurers would not be inclined to pay such claims, because a lot of times it would be foreseeable that you'd at some point in the future suffer a loss due to the defects in the insured property, and of course also where you have failed to maintain the insured property. Coming to the C's, and there I refer to contents, household contents, and there we are thinking items like furniture, clothes at home, electronics, all household items that you'd ordinarily find at home would fall under household contents. I've often had insurers give the example that if you were to take the roof off your house and turn it upside down, anything and everything that falls out would then be considered to be your household contents, with some adjustments depending on one's specific policy, of course. One of the featuring areas of disputes quite often in household content claims would be the security measures that are required. A lot of times there should be burglar bars, security gates, sometimes even an alarm system that have to be installed. An alarm system must be in a working condition at all times. Subscriptions must be up to date. And when not in occupation or leaving the house, one then has to activate that alarm system, and failure to comply with these measures could result in a loss. And once again, one can see this is essentially to minimize losses and to control risk. And if one doesn't take care of one's belongings, then one may compromise the cover that one enjoys. One has to also retain proof of ownership and value for the same reasons as explained when dealing with the all risk side of things. Again, also under your household contents, often there will be issues around whether or not there were signs of forced and or violent entry into the insured premises, and I've already explained why that would be the case. Perhaps I should pause here to just indicate that my colleague Regina Chindomu will be dealing a little bit more in detail with household contents. And we should look forward to that detailed discussion. The D's of your short-term insurance, driving, and by this I refer to your motor cover. This is your insurance on your car, caravans, trailers, motorcycles, etc. Again, depending on the exact structure of your policy. Here we look at things like the requirement that drivers should be in possession of driver's licenses and PRDPs. PRDPs are professional driving permits as required by law. Again, here we have requirements relating to security, things like your immobilizer and alarm that may need to be installed in the insured vehicle. Speaking to the risk of theft, and also tracking devices that also speak to the risk of theft and hijacking, so that there is at least a potential to track down the thieves and the stolen vehicle. Again, as you'll see, this is to minimize the risk that one undertakes. Often, particularly in more recent times, you will also find that the policy requires that there should be a telematics device installed, and a telematics device is essentially a device that monitors the driving behavior on the roads, and as a result of that, Sometimes even things like the premium can be adjusted accordingly based on one's driving behavior. And of course, this relates to the risk of accidents, and sometimes information that is obtained through these telematics devices could be used to validate claims, and it is therefore important that one should install when required to do so, and also ensure that the devices are in working order at all times. Some of the other disputes tend to relate to driving whilst under the influence of alcohol and reckless behavior on the road. And again, you will notice that this is essentially geared toward making sure that there isn't unnecessarily high risk undertaken by the insured, and accordingly also inadvertently transferring that unnecessary high risk to the insurer due to the cover that is in place. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to deal with the ease of short-term insurance, and here the E stands for economy. And under this, I discuss in very brief detail some of the things that one needs to comply with for your business policies. And essentially, I would be repeating everything that I've said previously with regards to the all risk, the buildings cover, your household contents cover, your motor vehicle cover. All those requirements tend to also filter through to your business insurance cover. And one needs to then comply. The one that is a little bit out of the ordinary and peculiar to your business policy is that for a lot of your risks under business, one would need to keep proper accounting records so that at the time of claiming, there are no issues in terms of one proving one's loss. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I have come to the end of my presentation. I hope you found it useful, and I proceed to hand over to Nuku van Koller, and she is on the OLTI side of the family. She is going to talk to us about complaints that cannot be upheld. I thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter, for the introduction. Yes, I'm Nuku van Koller, and I'm at the Office of the Ombudsman for Long-Term Insurance. I'm going to speak about instances. There are going to be 7 of them where our office, unfortunately, cannot be of assistance. And I'm just waiting for my slides, which are going to be put up. Oh, good. Yes, thank you very much. So our office also received, Dirpana mentioned that they received 15,000 complaints last year, and our office as well received almost 15,000 slides in the 2020 year. There are many instances where we cannot assist. As I said, I'm going to speak about 7 of them. We try and, of course, assist people wherever we can. And we can't assist people where we don't have jurisdiction, for instance, where they are going to complain about banks, being unhappy about a bank, or about a financial advisor, or about the pension fund. Those we will transfer to those offices. But when we get a complaint, and it does concern a long-term insurance policy, there are still some cases where we cannot assist. So the first one I want to come to is if the death occurs within a waiting period. Now the policy will have a clause that says the insurer is not going to admit a claim where a death is going to occur within a certain waiting period. And persons can't come to our office and say, please help us. This person died shortly before the expiry of that waiting period. Can you please assist us? We can't do this. The only thing that we can do is we can check if the insurer has actually applied the waiting period correctly. If they did, there is no valid claim. We can't assist, and they have to wait until that waiting period has expired before the insurer will actually consider the claim. It would be an arbitrary exercise if we would instruct the insurer to allow a claim that had fallen just shortly before the expiry date, so we can't assist in that instance. Of course, the insurer can decide what kind of risk they would like to take on, and this kind of clause must be explained to the applicant when they apply for a policy. And then we come to the other instance, it's the removal of a life insured. Now, spouses can insure each other, ask for life cover on each other's lives. Employer and employee, they can have cover. The employer can have cover on the employee's life. Partners, they can do the same. And when the relationship breaks up and the one person doesn't want to be covered on the policy anymore, our office cannot remove that person as a life insured. This is the right of the policy owner and the policy, that is the policy holder, and we cannot intervene. You know, when people get divorced, the relationship has ended, and perhaps the former spouse doesn't want to be covered on the policy anymore, asking our office to please intervene, but we can't do that. And also we cannot interfere to cancel a policy. That is also the right of the policy owner. So we can't uphold any complaint in that respect either. Then we come to investment performance. Unfortunately, lately, the values of policies have fallen. The markets haven't been very good, but our office cannot tell the insurer how to invest the assets. We are not asset managers. We're not the expertise, and we cannot ask an insurer to not, for the values that were on the policy, we cannot intervene there. We have a rule that says that we cannot interfere with the insurers, the judgment of the exercise of their commercial judgment. We will not interfere there. What we can do is we can ask for a breakdown of how the policy had grown over the years. We can then look at the values, see if it's reasonable. We can only then show that to the complainant, and we can also ask for an actuarial certificate that will show and certify if the value is correct. So they actually would have gone into the whole, how the policy had grown or fallen, and we can ask them to certify that at least the value is correct. Otherwise, we cannot interfere. And of course, if any value is not guaranteed, like an illustrative value, there too, we cannot ask the insurer to consider paying an illustrative value. It is not our business, and we cannot assist there either. It is very unfortunate. People have lost quite a bit of money on the values of their policies, and we just get a response from the insurer and we see if it's reasonable, and then otherwise we cannot assist. Then underwriting. Now, I find underwriting personally very, very interesting. It's a very wide field, of course, and the insurer will have a whole panel of underwriters that look at their risk. We talk about risk appetite that the insurer might have, and they will decide how much risk they would like to take on and what kind of premium they're going to charge. Our office can't interfere with that underwriting exercise by the insurer. The insurer looks at the applicant's medical history, their occupation, their lifestyle. I've just had a case recently where the person had actually disclosed that he had taken drugs, and he was very upset that the insurer wouldn't give him any cover. But we can't interfere, and we can't tell the insurer, look, you should actually accept this person regardless of his lifestyle. We do not interfere there at all. They look at occupation, of course, like a pilot. They might load the premiums. They might even exclude some conditions, and they will then charge the premium that they think is reasonable for the kind of risk that they are going to take on. What we do from our office perspective is that we ask for the underwriting criteria. And we can then see whether the insurer had actually applied those criteria reasonably and in terms of their own principles. We do not disclose these criteria to the complainant, but we can have a look at that and we can assist as far as we can. But the underwriting is definitely the domain of the insurer and we would not interfere there either. I just want to mention the Didcot principle. Now, about 2 years ago, we had a case that really hit the highlight, all the media attention. It was the Khanas matter, where the applicant, the insured, had not disclosed that he had suffered from diabetes at the time of application. And then a few years later, he died in a shooting accident, so completely unrelated to the diabetes. The insurer said, we're not going to pay, although the cause of death was completely unrelated, because this Mr. Khanas had not disclosed that he had suffered from diabetes. We would never have given him cover. The case came to our office and we had actually decided with the insurer to say that we can't interfere here. We've looked at all aspects. We went to a reinsurer to also give their opinion. And if the insurer had decided not to, they would not have issued a policy and given cover to this person, we couldn't take the matter much further. But you might remember there was huge media attention. And in the end, the insurer did decide to pay that benefit. But that all relates to how a policy can be restructured by excluding a condition and then assessing the claim on an unrelated, completely unrelated condition. Now I come to the surrender of endowment policies. Here there is a law that says in the first 5 years of the policy, the policyholder may only take one loan and one withdrawal from the endowment policy. Very restrictive, and of course we can't bend the law. Sorry, and we can't tell the insurer, you know, just allow another withdrawal from this policy. It's not allowed, and we cannot assist here. We cannot uphold a complaint in this regard. And there are also limitations to the amounts that you can withdraw, very strict as far as these endowment policies are concerned. The whole idea is to save your money for at least this term that you decided on, and then you can't have more than that withdrawal, sorry. Then we come to a refund of premiums on risk policies. I had quite a sad case, and we do get these quite often at the Ombudsman office, about people that contribute to their policies, and then unfortunately they run out of money and they can't pay these premiums anymore, and the policy lapses. They come to our office and they say, we want a refund of those premiums. We cannot assist. If it was a pure risk policy with no investment component, no savings component, no cash back component or clause in the policy, we cannot assist. We cannot get those risk premiums back for a person. Insurers are not like banks where you can save and save and save and then withdraw your money after a while. These premiums are not refundable. And it often happens, and we get so many complaints about people that have contributed so much more than what the cover amount is. I had a case recently where the person had contributed 70,000 to a policy that was only worth 15,000 Rand. And if he stopped to pay the contributions and the premiums, then the policy lapses and not even that 15,000 Rand would be payable. We have reported this kind of systemic kind of complaint. We have reported that to the FSCA. There's not much we can do about it, but it is being under review. Maybe these policies can become at least paid up and still offer some cover. And then my last incident that I want to mention is the commutation of annuities. We get so many complaints about this. People that are receiving annuities, and they receive these from the insurers. They have paid over money, and then later on they say no, they don't want the annuity anymore. They want cash. They want a cash lump sum instead of the annuity. There are very strict laws about this, taxation and pension fund laws, that says you cannot withdraw cash from your annuity. In terms of a life annuity, that it's payable for the life of the policyholder, and if there's a spouse's cover, then for the spouse as well until she or he passes away, but it's payable for life. And in terms of a living annuity, there is a law that says that if the value of the policy falls below 125,000 Rand, then you can withdraw it in cash. But otherwise, we cannot assist people in this respect, even though it doesn't matter what the circumstances are, medical, they're going to lose their houses. We simply cannot assist. It is the law and we have to uphold it. Well, thank you very much. And as I just said, I just want to conclude to say that we definitely try and help people, but we are certainly restricted in certain instances, as I've just mentioned about. The next speaker is Regina Shindumo. She is from the Office of the Ombudsman for Short-Term Insurance, and she's going to speak about specified home contents and know your insurer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nuku. Good morning. My name is Regina Chindomo. I am an Assistant Ombudsman with the Office of the Ombudsman for Short-Term Insurance, and the topic of my presentation, as advised, is Specified Household Contents, Know Your Cover. Insureds are sometimes under the misconception that comprehensive cover will cover them for any and every loss, as long as their premium is paid timeously. As such, we at OSTI sometimes find ourselves having to explain to consumers that an insurance policy is a contract to which both the consumer and the insurer agree to be bound by the terms and conditions set out in the policy documents, and where both parties have certain rights and obligations flowing from this contract. Understanding one's policy terms and conditions may not seem pertinent to some. However, this is a risky mindset, as knowing those terms and conditions could spell the difference between the insurer accepting or declining liability for a claim. Most policies that provide household contents cover will require an insured to specify certain items, such as mobile devices, watches, jewelry, or jewelry of a particular value. In the event that a consumer has specified the necessary items and such items are reflected as such in the policy schedule, there are other responsibilities that the consumer will have to comply or have complied with before the insurer will accept liability for the loss. The first point I will discuss here is insured value versus replacement value. The duty rests on a consumer to specify the items on cover and to provide the insurer with the replacement value of those items. The responsibility rests solely with the consumer to ensure that the insured items are adequately covered. When an item is specified for lower than its replacement value, the insurer will only be liable to indemnify the consumer on that lower specified amount. Where an item is specified for an amount higher than the replacement value, the insurer will only be liable to indemnify the consumer for the replacement value of that item. In a past complaint that was handled by this office, the consumer specified a pair of earrings for an amount of 22,000. During a robbery at his home, several items were stolen, including the pair of earrings. In validating the claim, it was established that the replacement value of the earrings was 13,000 rands instead. The insurer settled the earrings for an amount of 13,000 rands, and our office upheld the insurer's decision in this regard. Consumers must also be aware that the policy entitles an insurer to choose how a policyholder will be indemnified for a loss. The policy provisions afford the insurer the right to indemnify a policyholder for a valid claim by settling the claim in cash, replacing the item, or repairing the item through a supplier of the insurer's own choice, or a combination thereof. Referring to the above-mentioned complaint, while the insurer's earrings were specified for an amount of 22,000 rands, the insurer demonstrated that its service provider was able to replace the earrings for a lower amount of 13,000 rands. An important principle of short-term insurance is that an insurer will indemnify a policyholder for the actual financial loss suffered. Therefore, where the insurer demonstrates that the policyholder's loss would amount to 13,000 rands to replace, our office cannot compel the insurer to settle a higher amount, as this would constitute an enrichment of the policyholder. The incorrect insured value can also lead to underinsurance, which occurs when the replacement value of a risk at the time of loss is more than the insured amount reflected in the policy schedule. In a different complaint previously received by our office, the complainant was unhappy with the manner in which the insurer had calculated the settlement offer. The complainant's claim was for household contents stolen during a burglary at the home. During the validation of the claim, the insurer established that the complainant's household contents were underinsured by about 50%. In making our finding, we considered the complainant's policy documents, which provided a clear explanation of underinsurance and the application of average in the event that the policyholder is underinsured. As previously mentioned, the responsibility rests solely on a consumer to ensure that the insured items are adequately covered. Where a consumer is underinsured, the consumer will have to bear a rateable portion of the loss. In the above example, the complainant was only settled 50% of the total claimed amount. Where the insurer can adequately prove that the consumer was underinsured at the time of loss, and where the subsequent average calculations are shown to be correct, our office will uphold the insurer's decision in this regard. The next topic I will handle is proof of ownership and value. Where a consumer is claiming for the loss of specified items, the consumer has a responsibility to provide the insurer with proof of ownership for the claimed items. That is, the consumer will need to provide objective evidence that sufficiently demonstrates that the consumer indeed owned the claimed items. Further, the value of said items must be readily obtainable from this evidence. In many complaints received by our office, consumers will argue that it is not practical for a consumer to keep all receipts for all items purchased over a period of time. Another common submission by consumers is that they are in possession of photographs of the claimed items and that the insurer should accept such photographs as proof of ownership. At this juncture, as previously discussed by my colleague, our office will usually explain to the complainant that photographs do not prove ownership or value, as items could belong to any other person, though frequently photographed with the complainant. When a consumer is unable to provide the insurer with satisfactory proof of ownership and value, the insurer will be entitled to exclude those items from the consumer settlement. However, in matters where it can reasonably be shown that a consumer did own items such as a television set or a microwave, but where there is no evidence to demonstrate the value of that stolen item, this office finds that it is more equitable for an insurer to settle the claimed items on an entry-level basis as opposed to rejecting the item in full. The last topic I will discuss is keeping jewelry and high-value items in a locked safe. Cover for high-value items such as jewelry and watches may depend on such items being kept in a locked safe when not in use. If, for example, the property is burgled and the specified items are stolen from the consumer's wardrobe or anywhere else other than a locked safe, the insurer will be entitled to reject that portion of the claim on the premise that the consumer failed to comply with the policy conditions. In matters where the insurer has rejected a portion of the claim on this ground, this office will consider the materiality of the consumer's breach. Where the insurer can demonstrate that the non-compliance with the locked safe requirement was material to the loss, our office will uphold the rejection. In conclusion, I wish to state that each complaint brought before our office is considered based on its own merits. As with any other contract, a breach by the insurer or the consumer will have varying consequences for that party. Whether premiums are paid up to date, or whether a consumer has been with a specific insurer for a number of years, the policy provisions will determine the circumstances under which the policy will or will not provide cover. Unless the evidence indicates otherwise, where an insurer demonstrates that a policyholder breached the terms of the policy and that such breach is material to the risk or the loss, OSTI will uphold the insurer's decision. That brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina, and thank you to all of our speakers for the valuable information that you shared. We will now move on to address the questions and comments that are in the chat session. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to type them in during the panel discussion. Also joining us in the panel discussion is Tasneem Dawood, a Senior Assistant Ombudsman at OSTI, as well as Edith Texera McKinnon, who is a CEO at OSTI. Ngceba, I will kick off with you because this question came up during one of your presentations. And I think you would like to maybe give the writer a bit of clarity. It says that the fact that you do not have a turnaround time for resolving complaints is concerning. Maybe we should discuss a little bit more about OLTI's turnaround time. And then after this, I will hand over to Tasneem to discuss OSTI's turnaround time and the differences between the complaints handling process. Over to you, Ngceba.
Thank you very much, Ayanda. Ayanda, most of our complaints are resolved within 90 days. Those complaints which are not resolved within that period are complicated matters such as disability cases, and those cases in which we request expert opinion. So those cases which are, easy to resolve, they resolve within that period. Otherwise, it doesn't take too long to resolve a complaint unless, you've got a disability case where you have to request an opinion from an expert doctor, or you request a legal opinion, then that takes too long. Thank you.
Thank you, Ngceba. Before I let you go, there was another question which says, on the issue of the turnaround time, how quickly can OLTI finalize a complaint on a funeral policy because our clients need a quick resolution?
As I have said, I've just said, I think the answer I've already indicated that most complaints are resolved within a period of 90 days. Some of them, they are resolved as quickly as possible. Once a complaint is lodged with our office, insurers, they tend to pay those claims without even, the case being seen by us. So most cases are resolved as quickly as possible. It is only those cases where they are contentious issues that needs to be looked by adjudicators, which tend to take too long.
Thank you, Ngceba. Tasneem? Tasneem, you're on mute.
Thanks, Ayanda. You know what they say, that's the most common thing these days to say since March last year. You're on mute. Sorry about that. So, yes, as far as OSTI's turnaround times are concerned, we do have a target turnaround time of 120 days, and most cases that are capable of being resolved within that time are in fact done so. And Ngceba has expressed the same types of circumstances that we would experience at our office on matters that are not capable of being resolved within a particular period of time or that targeted period of time. And it is mostly because of matters which are in fact complicated, have more information than other matters would have, and each matter is dealt with on their own merits. And some matters do tend to run longer than others because of its complicated nature. And our office will not make a decision on a matter unless we are satisfied that we have all the information necessary for us to make a decision. And if it needs be, we will then be requesting information from both parties until we receive the information to do that. We are also dependent on the parties to provide us with that information. And then sometimes it would be that we are waiting for information before we can move to the next step of a matter. So it purely depends on the matter and the merits of that matter and how complicated it is.
Absolutely correctly. I think, it's also important to add, I know this is also applied in the OLTI office, that we do have a fast track process where we would resolve complaints that are less complex in a separate department, and those matters can be resolved within 56 days. But like Tasneem had already mentioned, the more complex the matter is, where there is reports and sometimes engineers' reports and various recordings that need to be considered by the relevant adjudicator, those matters could possibly take a long period of time. I do, however, wish to also add that during the period that the matter is with OSTI, the prescription and time barring is suspended, and therefore there wouldn't be any prejudice on the part of the insured, due to the fact that our officers are still dealing with the matter. Edith, welcome, and thank you for participating in the workshop. I have a very interesting question which states, Judge McLaren works for both OSTI and OLTI. How would you sum up his role? This is one question. And also, secondly, how would he do it when the office reopens, because one office is in Cape Town and the other office is in Johannesburg?
Thank you, Ayanda. Thank you for the question. So the judge, with regards to our OSTI, Ombudsman for short-term insurance, his role is the adjudicative head. Anything to do with operations falls outside of his role, unlike at the long-term office, where he also heads up the operation of the organization. As was happening before the lockdown, a lot of our work is conducted remotely, and we don't need the judge to be in the office for him to do his work. What lockdown has actually shown us is that we can do our work and continue to deliver the services that we need to on a remote basis. What he was doing is, because last year was his first year at OSTI, he would travel every month. He would come and visit us and spend a few days in our office. But now that he's settled in, there really isn't a need for the judge to travel. We're able to do our work remotely. Thank you, Ayanda.
Thank you, Edith. I have a question for OLTI, but whilst I still have you here, the question asks, does OLTI have a monetary jurisdiction? I will hand over to Nuku to address this question, but before I do so, I'd like to give you an opportunity to discuss OSTI's jurisdiction as well.
Thank you. So our jurisdiction is set out in our terms of reference. And according to our terms of reference, we do have a monetary jurisdiction. In other words, when dealing with a complaint, we can only deal with a certain amount in terms of the amount that is in dispute. That limit is 3.5 million for all types of complaints, except any complaint dealing with damage to a building or a home. There, the monetary limit is 6.5 million. Other than that monetary limit, we have no limits on our jurisdiction. as long as the complaint relates to short-term insurance and is not a complaint by a third party, in other words, someone that is not a party to that contract, we're able to deal with that.
Thank you, Edith. Nuku, please run us through OLTI's jurisdiction.
Yes, thank you very much. No, we do not have any limitations. People have come to us, you know, about complaints or claims that could be millions and millions. I'm sorry about that. In fact, I know that there was about 100 million rand claim that the judge had actually dealt with. It was on a non-disclosure. So, I mean, we would consider any claim. It doesn't matter what the monetary value is going to be. We do have restriction when it comes to compensation. We can only award up to 50,000 rand for poor service. And when that the service has caused distress and inconvenience, etc., to the complainant, 50,000 rand is our limitation there. And those that is just given in very serious cases, usually very poor service. But otherwise, on a claim, no, we don't have that restriction. I think the phase ombud has a restriction, but not our office. We would look at all complaints where we have jurisdiction. Thanks, Ayanda.
Thank you, Nuku. Peter, you spoke about the A, B, C, Ds, and Es of short-term insurance. I think this particular question will apply to that part of your presentation. You, well, the participant would like to know, must one test the tracker unit installed in the vehicle, and if it is not tested regularly and then the car is subsequently stolen, would the claim be paid out by the insurer despite the tracking device being installed in the vehicle?
It's a very important one.
Peter, we're having a problem with your audio. You've got...
Oh, sorry, I moved my mouthpiece upward earlier. Thank you for the question. I was saying it's a very important question in that it does, in a lot of instances, compromise consumers and benefits that could derive from the policy are not received by the consumer. Remember, as I indicated, I think throughout my discussion, a lot of these policy requirements are about managing risk. So it doesn't help that you simply install a tracking device if it is not going to be working. You need to then make sure that having installed it, you also make sure that it works. That is one of the reasons why, apart from checking that it functions, you also have to make sure that you pay the relevant subscriptions. It also wouldn't help that the device is in working condition, it's installed, but you're not paying your premiums, because then you're not going to receive the service that supports the tracking device being in the vehicle, such that once it has been reported stolen, the tracking company can dispatch its teams and send out messages around to say there is this vehicle that has been lost. Let's see if we can find it. So it is very important that one must check. And perhaps the one last point to make in that regard is that these devices don't all work the same way. And perhaps that could also be crucial, because some people might assume that because the previous one that I had was a self-testing device, I never had to test. Now these people are telling me that I need to be testing this one. I'm not going to do that. It's a waste of my time. So it's important that the specific device that you've got installed, you abide by the terms and conditions of service, which may include that you should be conducting tests within specified periods of time. And I hope that answers the question and helps in managing risk. Thank you, Ayanda.
Thank you. It does answer the question. I'd also like to add, however, that as a consumer, if you do have a claim rejected on the issue of a tracking device that is not working, you are still welcome to submit a complaint with our office. In the event that we conduct our investigations and we find that there is equitable grounds, or perhaps there wasn't any materiality in respect of the device, but obviously each matter is dealt with on its own merits, you could still have a successful claim. But we would encourage that consumers comply with the terms and conditions of the policy, and the tracking device being one of them, is to make every effort to ensure that it is in working order. Peter, whilst you were discussing issues around building maintenance, a question came up stating, why is building maintenance excluded? And does your office find this a fair exclusion?
Thank you. That's an interesting one. I think I'll borrow from Nuku's earlier presentation when she said your insurance policy is not like a savings account where you put in money from which you can then later withdraw. The same thing applies to your short-term insurance. It is not a maintenance plan. I guess there could be some maintenance plans out there, and if one seeks one, that is what you should contract for. But that is not the purpose for which there is short-term insurance. Short-term insurance is basically there to say, should there be unforeseen sudden events that result in loss, I, as the consumer, am managing that loss, and that is why you have to do things like maintain, etc., because if the property is properly maintained, some of the losses will not happen. And in the event that I have done all of that and there is still a loss that I suffer, that is only then that the insurer comes into play and through the policy then steps into your shoes and carries the losses in question. So that is the essence of an insurance policy, and not to provide maintenance. And unfortunately, a lot of consumers have that mistaken belief that once one has an insurance policy in place, one would then be entitled to put in a claim every time there is something wrong with the house, even if it may not be an insured event. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Nuku, this question is for you. During your presentation, you mentioned that you are not able to assist a complainant when the claimed event occurs during the waiting period. The question is this waiting period a standard clause, or could one find an insurer that does not have this clause?
Yanda, thank you very much. That is a very good question. No, it definitely depends on the policy. What does the policy say? If the policy a policy might not have a waiting clause, that's quite rare for natural causes. In the case of an accident, yes, that could be. Many policies says if there's an accident, we pay out immediately. There is no waiting period. The policies vary. Some of them have a 3-month waiting period for natural causes. Some of them have 6 months, but some of them don't have. So it absolutely depends on what does the policy say. What is the waiting period? It's not standard. It depends on the specific clause in the policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Nuku. And whilst I still have you, one of the questions that a lot of consumers ask is how long before a claimed event or during the process of, the back and forth between the insurer and the complainant, does one have to approach your office? Is there a time period in which after, for example, the claim has been rejected, or the insurer has delayed in finalizing the claim, that they should approach your office? And when you are done, I would like to hand this question over to Derpana from OSTI to discuss that period with us as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayanda. I just want to mention something about trying to get complaints done as quickly as possible. We do also have a fast track system at our office when something is very serious. We're also looking at vulnerable complainants at the moment to really try and help people as quickly as possible. So we've got those processes ongoing. But what I want to mention is that we're not all that strict about when people should contact us. We certainly work on a diary system, and we keep track of a case so that we get the response from the insurer after a certain period of time, and we get the response, the comment back from the complainant after a period of time, but it's not set in stone. We are very flexible when this comes. We try and deal with it in a very streamlined basis, but we're not going to close off a complaint if there's a delay from either the complainant or the insurer, although we will follow up with the insurer and give them only 2 opportunities to submit that response to us. There's a whole long process how we handle that, but we wouldn't shut people out. Even if we have closed a case and people come afterwards to us and they say, look, we've got new information, please reopen a case, then we can do that. So we're quite flexible with people when they come to submit a complaint. Thank you.
Thank you, Nuku. Derpana?
With regard to the insurers, we do have processes in place with regard to reminders and penalties, specifically on the first answer that is to be received from the insurer. And thereafter, we would, obviously we do give, like Nuku said, we also give both the complainant and the insurer ample opportunity to provide us with the information that is required. However, we would reach a stage where, if the complainant is not responsive and we are not getting any joy, either from telephonic communication or from email communication, then we will then consider making a decision on the basis of the information at hand. We do deal with a lot of complaints, and we do try to stick to the timelines, but complainants are more than welcome to contact us at any point during the process in order to get an update, in order to understand how the process is evolving. Yeah, that's all I can say from that point of view.
Thank you, Derpana. That's very informative, and thank you, Nuku, for that as well. Tasneem, on the issue of property maintenance, I have a question which it essentially asks what the consequences would be if one buys property and an incident occurs and it's maintenance related. Would the previous insurer have to look at the claim? By previous insurer, it's referred to the insurer of the previous owner, or would a claim need to be submitted under the current insurance? So this is a recently purchased property.
So under maintenance that is related to, let me start with this. Maintenance is generally excluded in policies of a building's nature. And if maintenance is related to a property which you purchased and it is the responsibility of the previous owner, that is between you and the previous owner. It's a contract between you and the previous owner, and you can take it up with that previous owner. Your current insurer is not liable for your obligations in respect of maintenance and should not and will not be held responsible in most of these policies, if not all, for maintenance related issues. And that particular scenario would have to be dealt with between you and the previous owner.
Thank you, Tasneem. In the interest of time, I'll begin to conclude this workshop. We have about 5 minutes left before the end of our scheduled time, and I know that some of our delegates have other commitments. However, I just want to ask, before I do conclude, I want to ask Adit one last question, which is very prevalent in terms of the information that the consumers would like to know, is what are some of the biggest challenges that have been faced by consumers during this pandemic, and what advice would you give to the consumers during this time in terms of protecting themselves? I know there's obviously a wide range of issues and so much that can be said to inform consumers in terms of protecting them. But what is one of those nuggets that you would like to share with our consumers?
So these have been very difficult times. We've seen a lot of businesses being affected by, you know, the crisis, the pandemic, the protocols that have been put in place by government. So lots of businesses have been affected, and individuals and their livelihoods, with restaurants and the tourist industry also greatly affected. And what has come out of all of this is actually the importance of having insurance, even if it's only a limited cover, some cover, because a lot of people will not be able to recover from the effects that the pandemic and COVID-19 has had on their livelihoods and their businesses. So even if you have to reduce your cover, at least have some cover that is in place so that you can try and recover from any disaster that occurs or any insured event that happens to you. So I think the importance of insurance has really been highlighted during this time. Many insurers have come to the assistance of policyholders. There were some delays, there was some legal uncertainty around whether the business interruption had been caused by the lockdown or was it caused by the virus. That has now been settled, and as soon as that decision was made by the courts, the insurers attended to those claims and have settled the majority of those complaints in our office. Thank you, Ayanda.
Thank you, Edith. And on that note, I will now conclude this workshop. You have been a great audience and we received very interesting questions. So thank you for your participation. We also look forward to you joining us next year. In the meantime, please stay connected with us on our social media platforms as well as on our website. Look out for our press releases and newsletters as we do share quite a bit of information and developing trends within the insurance industry. Just a note that we have recorded this workshop and it will be made available on our respective websites and on social media. In closing, I will now hand over to Edith to say a few words before we part ways. Thank you and enjoy your day further from my side.
So from my side, a big thank you to you, Ayanda, for organising this workshop. A thank you to our attendees for your time this morning, to Ardila and to Marlies for your technical support, to all our speakers and those who fielded your questions. Also from my side, I just want to say thank you to our colleagues from OLTI, and enjoy the rest of your day. If you have any questions that you want any of us to answer, we are available and we will attempt to address those queries as well. So thank you very much, everybody.